The mansion was silent, its polished halls echoing with the faint hum of luxury, when a single act disrupted the routine. A black housekeeper, exhausted yet determined, brought her young son to work, hoping no one would notice. She feared reprimand, humiliation, even the loss of her job. But what happened instead stunned everyone. For behind the mansion's cold walls of wealth and power, the millionaire boss was about to make a gesture so unexpected it would rewrite the lives of both mother and child, and leave a message the world desperately needed to hear. The mansion sparkled with perfection, a palace of white marble floors, chandeliers that glistened like falling stars, and long hallways lined with priceless art. To its wealthy owner, this was merely home, but to the housekeeper who arrived each morning before sunrise, it was a world that reminded her daily of the distance between privilege and survival. Her name was Denise. She had worked tirelessly for years, scrubbing every corner of the mansion, until her hands cracked, her back ached, and exhaustion clung to her like a shadow. Life outside these polished walls was far from glamorous. Denise was a single mother, raising her young son Marcus, in a cramped apartment where bills piled higher than paychecks. On most days, Marcus stayed with a neighbor while his mother worked, but when that help suddenly fell through, Denise faced a painful decision: stay home and risk losing the only job keeping them afloat, or bring Marcus with her, quietly, and pray no one noticed. With fear heavy in her chest, she chose the latter. Clutching her son's hand, she whispered promises that he must stay quiet, hidden, and out of the way. She knew the risks. In homes like these, rules were strict, and even the smallest mistake could cost everything. That morning, as Marcus wandered through the mansion's endless corridors, wide-eyed and overwhelmed by the sheer wealth surrounding him, Denise's heart raced with dread. Every step her son took echoed like a ticking clock toward disaster. She had no idea that his presence, instead of bringing punishment, would set in motion an event that would leave her stunned and challenge everything she thought she knew about her employer. Marcus's small footsteps echoed against the mansion's polished floors as Denise worked frantically, her hands trembling with every sweep of the mop. She constantly glanced over her shoulder, terrified that the wrong person would notice her son wandering the hallways. It wasn't just the fear of scolding, it was the fear of losing her livelihood, the fragile paycheck that kept food on their table and rent barely paid. The mansion was a different world for Marcus. He stared at towering shelves filled with books that no one seemed to read, glittering ornaments that were off limits even to touch, and windows so tall they seemed to reach the sky. Everything here spoke of abundance, a life he had never known. Yet what fascinated him most wasn't the marble or gold, it was the quiet, the sense that inside this house people lived without the constant worry that weighed on his mother every single day. Denise, however, felt the opposite. Every corner of the mansion magnified her vulnerability. She was invisible when she scrubbed the floors, yet the presence of her son made her suddenly visible in the most dangerous way. She remembered the whispered warnings from other workers: don't step out of line, don't bring personal problems here. To them we're replaceable. Those words haunted her as Marcus peered curiously into rooms she wished he hadn't. When Marcus found the grand library, his mother's heart sank. It wasn't just any room, it was the most private space of the mansion's owner. Denise rushed to pull him away, but not before the boy's small hands ran across the spines of books, his eyes widening at the titles. He whispered questions she didn't have the courage to answer. Why so many books? Did anyone read them? Could he? Her voice caught in her throat as she tried to hush him. She knew the danger of hope. Hope in her world was fragile, too easily crushed by rules, by prejudice, by the unspoken hierarchy that kept her scrubbing floors while others built futures. She wanted to believe Marcus could dream of more, but the mansion seemed like the cruelest reminder of everything that was out of reach. And then it happened. A shadow appeared in the doorway, tall and unmistakable. The millionaire himself stood there, his expression unreadable, his gaze fixed on the boy who had no place in this world of wealth. Denise's heart stopped. She was certain this was the end. Her son's innocent curiosity would cost her the job she so desperately clung to. But as the silence stretched, something unexpected flickered in the man's eyes. Denise's knees nearly buckled under the weight of fear as the millionaire's gaze shifted from her son to her. She opened her mouth ready to apologize, to plead for mercy, but no words came. Her mind filled with the image of eviction notices, empty cupboards, and Marcus's hungry eyes, all because she had made one desperate choice. But then, instead of anger, the man stepped into the library with slow, deliberate movements. His eyes lingered on Marcus, who clutched a book almost too heavy for his small hands. Denise expected a reprimand, perhaps even an order to leave immediately, yet the silence broke in the most unexpected way. The man didn't demand explanations. He asked a question, not about rules, not about broken protocol, but about Marcus. What did the boy want to read? For a moment, Denise thought she had misheard. Her son, still clutching the book, whispered the title aloud. It was a story of adventure, of courage, of possibility, worlds away from the reality they lived in. The millionaire studied the child's eager eyes, and with a subtle nod, pulled another book from the shelf, placing it gently into Marcus's hands. It was an act so small, yet to Denise, it carried the weight of the world. She realized she wasn't watching a reprimand. She was witnessing a gesture of recognition. Her son wasn't being treated like a nuisance. He was being treated like he mattered. The moment shifted the very air in the room. Denise's fear cracked, replaced by something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Marcus, too, seemed transformed, his face glowing with the thrill of being seen, not as a poor boy out of place in a mansion, but as a child full of potential. In that instant, the library no longer belonged only to the rich. It became a place where possibility stretched its arms wide enough to include them too. After that moment in the library, something shifted permanently in the mansion's atmosphere. Denise returned to her work with trembling hands, uncertain if what she had witnessed was a fleeting act of kindness, or the beginning of something greater. But the days that followed told her the truth. The millionaire didn't just ignore Marcus's presence, he acknowledged him. Each morning, when Denise arrived, there was now a quiet allowance, an unspoken permission for her son to enter the library while she worked. At first Marcus wandered the shelves in awe, his fingers tracing titles that spoke of worlds he had never imagined. Soon he was reading with a hunger that surprised even his mother. Denise would glance into the room between her tasks, and see her son perched at a heavy wooden desk, his small frame dwarfed by the grandeur around him, his eyes lit with possibility. It was as if he had discovered a treasure chest, one filled not with gold but with knowledge. The staff whispered about it. Some disapproved, muttering that the millionaire was being too lenient. Others scoffed, insisting that a cleaner's child had no place in those rooms. But the man's silence was louder than their criticism. By simply leaving the library door open, he made a statement. Opportunity did not belong to wealth alone. Weeks passed, and Marcus began carrying stories from the mansion's shelves back to their tiny apartment. He shared them with his mother at night, his voice animated, his dreams growing larger with every page. Denise, once fearful of hope, now felt it surging inside her. She realized that her son's future no longer seemed like a fragile fantasy. It was becoming something tangible. For the millionaire, it may have been a small gesture, but for Denise and Marcus, it was life-changing. A single act of seeing them, not as servant and child, but as people worthy of respect, had planted seeds of transformation. And so, a story that could have ended in humiliation, turned into one of empowerment. It was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful gestures aren't grand or public. They're quiet, private choices to open doors that others keep locked. The question that lingers is this: how many lives could change if more doors were opened? How many children, hidden in the shadows of inequality, are waiting for someone to see them, to believe in them, to simply give them the chance to learn? Because in the end, wealth isn't measured by what you own, but by the opportunities you create for others.